Hi everyone. We're having a new theme for my Facebook page, which is misunderstood herbs. And I began that last month by talking about tribulus. And this month, what better herb to choose than the one behind me, my favorite herb, Echinacea, because this still remains, I believe, the most misunderstood Western herb. Now, you might be tired of me talking about echinacea all the time and how it is misunderstood. So, if you got it, then perhaps you could pass on that. But I still keep getting asked questions about some of these, what I call echinacea myths. So, clearly, I do have to keep talking about it. So, I think one reason why echinacea is so misunderstood is we think, well, herbs for the immune system, they have to be very powerful, don't they? They might potentially be harmful. They might even overstimulate and wear out your immune system. But none of these apply to echinacea. It is seriously a very benign herb. So let's go through some of the areas under which echinacea is misunderstood. I've kind of touched on them. The first is it'll wear out the immune system. So this is the major number one myth, that you can't take echinacea for too long because it will stimulate your immune system and wear it out. Well, here I am. I've been taking echinacea continuously now for more than 20 years. I have the odd break, of course. I might be traveling and run out of it, in which case I'm often desperate to get some from some practitioners I encounter in my seminars, because that's usually while I'm traveling, or just I might go on holidays and stop it for a week or so, something like that. But in the main, I've been taking it continuously now for more than 20 years, and I have to say it hasn't worn out my immune system. I would have to say, touch wood, that especially in the past few years, I've had, no, not traveling, so not getting jet lag. I've had very little in the way of illness. So, where does this myth that you can't take it long term come from? Well, it comes from a misinterpretation of a scientific study that was published more than 3 decades ago, where they gave echinacea for a period of time, and they were only looking at one aspect of immune function. And if you looked at the graphs, the immune response appeared to go up and then appeared to go down again. But what people missed looking at that study was, in fact, they had stopped giving echinacea at the point where it started going down. So it's just a treatment washout effect. And the residual benefit on the immune system lasted for days. The number was still above 100% for days later. So rather than wearing out your immune response after a few days, when the echinacea was stopped, it still had a residual benefit on your immune system. And yet that major piece of misunderstanding has stuck. And the tragedy is it takes away from the best use of echinacea. And I want to clarify, I'm talking here about echinacea root. That's another area where the herb is misunderstood, is about plant part. And I'll talk a bit about that next. But I'm talking here about echinacea root. This misunderstanding that you can't take echinacea long term takes away from its most significant use, which is as a preventative, and particularly as an early intervention preventative. So the ideal scenario is to take a baseline dose, as I do, and if I'm feeling unwell, then to really pump it in extra doses. So the tablets I use, my baseline dose is now 3 a day, and if I'm feeling unwell, I might temporarily go up to 12 a day, for example, and it does work. And I've had patients say to me time after time, this stuff really does work, doesn't it? It's miraculous. I thought I was getting sick, and like you said, I took some extra for a few days and I didn't get sick. So it is actually that good. So yes, you can take it all the time. And if you do this early intervention up of the dose as a preventative, That is the strength of Echinacea. And it's basically how I built my herbal practice in those early years, by discovering that about Echinacea, using the right quality product and giving it in the right sort of dosage protocols that I've just described. So now let's come to the use of plant part. And that then flicks us into another misunderstanding about what is active in Echinacea. So we have various plant parts that can be used: the seed, the above ground parts, the whole plant, the root, and so on. If we look at the traditional use of Echinacea, it was the root that was mainly used. And that's the part I stick to. Now, there is a logic to that. I mean, there's been a later use of the aerial parts that was developed in Europe in around about the 1930s. The German herbalist Madaus was largely behind that. But that to me is like using a completely new entity. And none of that modern use of Echinacea aerial parts in Europe relates to the traditional use of the Echinacea root. And it's from the traditional use of the Echinacea root that we actually learned and interpreted that it was good for the immune system. So why would you cancel out the very source of information that led you to use the herb in this way? And that source of information is linked to plant part, which is the root. Alba angustifolia, that's mainly what the eclectics used, Echinacea angustifolia. But you can blend in the purpurea, and that's what I do. So part of that preference for the root speaks to an understanding what it is in Echinacea that is active. And I believe it's largely the alkaloids, those tingly components on your tongue, that are active. And they're highest in the root. Indeed, an alcohol water extract of the root will get them out. And those advocates of, say, the watery extracts, especially of the aerial parts, have chosen another explanation for how Echinacea works, which is this concept of polysaccharides. So I'm not against polysaccharides being active on the immune system per se, because to me that's the value of medicinal mushrooms. But even in an aerial preparation of Echinacea done with water, or even a root preparation of water, they're done at they're there, these polysaccharides are there at very, very low levels compared to, say, eating a mushroom or what's in a mushroom extract. So it's a dosage thing. And as I said, why would you use, in a sense, a later use of an Echinacea plant part, which is the aerial parts, to explain the very origins of our information about Echinacea, which came from the root. So it's those alkaloamides, and indeed the eclectic herbalists who used the Echinacea root very widely in the early 20th century and to good effect during various pandemics then, said when chewed, the root, if of good quality, imparts a persistent tingling sensation, and that's what those alkaloamides do. So I say to my patients, real Echinacea makes your mouth tingle. Now, if you're giving a tablet, well, they can suck on the tablet and that'll make your mouth tingle as well. And I've actually been involved in pharmacokinetic studies that show that the alkaloamides are pretty well the only part phytochemical in Echinacea that has significant bioavailability, that gets into your bloodstream to exert effects on your immune cells at different sites. So don't misunderstand the power of Echinacea. It is a wonderful practice-building herb, but you must use the root, and it can be angustifolia and purpurea mixed, and it works best as a preventative. Thank you.